Hello everybody and welcome back to another Pokémon Emerald video. Today I will attempt to get through the game just with a single Magneton. Although that's a bit of a weird sentence because Magneton is made out of 3 Magnemites, or at least it seems like that. Anyway, for the rules, I can only use my starter in combat. I cannot use items from my bag in battle, I can't increase my evasion in any way, and I can't use cheats or glitches. On first impressions, it may seem like Magneton is going to be great for this run. After all, Emerald and the Hoenn region are known for their loads of water types. And since Manectric is a part electric type, we should defeat them very easily. Unfortunately, reality is never that simple, and so we are likely to encounter quite a few problems along the way. At least for the first few fights in the game, things are much simpler. Our part Steel type allows us to take many hits, and so we should never risk dying. Also, while Thundershock does not have the highest base power, it is stab and still decent. Unfortunately, the layout was not really cooperating today, and so there are quite a few mistakes on it throughout the run. For the first gym leader, I had to level up a bit until level 16, because that's when I get Sonic Boom. That move deals a fixed 20 damage, which I can use to defeat the Geodudes, because Thundershock is useless and Tackle deals very little damage. Once I finally reached her nose pass, I maybe should have switched back to Thundershock, but Sonic Boom dealt enough damage for me to be satisfied. After we have defeated Roxanne, we can do a couple more things around town, and before leaving, we can take on our rival once again. Her team here is very dangerous. Torkoal knows Ember, which deals a lot of damage, but fortunately her starter Mudkip has not evolved yet, and so Thundershock is enough to one-shot it. Next, I skipped the gym fight against Brawly because he has the type advantage, and I was sure to be defeated at least a few times. Instead, I went to Slateport, where we have to deliver some engine parts, but before we can do so, we are attacked by a few Team Aqua grunts. Their Pokémons do not handle electricity very well, and so after a few attacks I am done with them. Once that situation was solved, I had to grind quite a bit, because the next major fight is going to be quite dangerous. May is able to defeat me once because now her Mudkip evolved into a Marshtomp, and so I cannot use Thundershock on it anymore, but more importantly, it learned Mudshot, and since that attack is a ground type, it is 4 times super effective on me, and so it deals a lot of damage, more than enough to two-shot me. Fortunately, I can learn Swagger in Slateport, and with that move I can make him hit himself long enough for me to beat him. Next is the third gym leader, second for us, Wattson. His team is mostly made of electric types, which is not fantastic because electric resists electric. But since I took the time to grind enough money to get Thunderbolt, my damage output was still quite good. In this fight I did not equip a Cherry Berry because I forgot that in the third generation, electric types can still be hit by Thunder Wave. That is not the case in later generations. Even though I was paralyzed, the status effect did not come up very often, and so after a few turns I am able to defeat the last one of his Pokémons. With this badge, we can use the Rock Smash HM out of combat and eventually we get to the Meteorfall Caves. Here we find Team Aqua and Magma arguing before we are informed about Maxi, and so we climb the volcano to prevent him from triggering it. And for once the fight against him was quite painful. His Camerupt has magnitude and for some reason he kept getting magnitude 8, which was enough to one-shot me, especially after the attack boost from Swagger. After being quite unlucky with the confusion for a few matches, I was finally able to get good RNG, and in the fourth attempt against him, Magneton hit itself twice in a row, and that was enough for me to defeat this whole team. Unfortunately, this is not where our trouble ends in this part of the region, because the next gym fight is going to be against Flannery, and she uses mostly fire types. And of course, Camerupt was the main problem once again. Surprisingly enough, Torkoal was not that big of a deal, since I could one-shot it with a Thunderbolt. Between the high base power and the large special attack of Magneton, that was just enough damage to defeat the turtle in one attack. Of course, the strategy to take down Camerupt is still the same: swagger it and hope for decent RNG. Unfortunately, Magneton's move pool is not that great. The only two types that I can inflict damage with are normal and electric. In this game, all normal attacks are physical, and since Magneton attack is not that great, they end up dealing very little damage. Electric is resisted by ground, and so that typing is going to be a thorn in our side for the whole game. There are a couple other options like Toxic and Rollout, but both of those are too slow to be effective against an Earthquake spammer. Getting back on track, after sweeping through Brawly thanks to my huge level advantage, I am able to take on our dead Norman. His Pokémons are not too threatening. Their strongest attacks are normal, which I resist, and so I can freely spam Thunderbolt and defeat them in 1 or 2 attacks each. Once we are done with this gym, we can use the Surf HM out of combat, and that allows us to reach the other side of the region. Here I forgot to record the fight against the Team Aqua Admiral Shelly, but you did not miss much. She does not have a Camerupt on her team, so defeating her was extremely easy. The fight against our rival just after that was a bit more challenging, but thanks to my very high level, I am now able to take a couple of attacks from her starter. Moving on from that, we have to defeat the next gym leader, and Winona specializes in flying types, so this one should be fine for us. There are a couple of annoying Pokémons in this fight, like the Altaria, which survives an attack and fires off a pretty powerful earthquake, but fortunately for me that is not enough to one-shot me, and so I can finish off the Cloud Dragon in the next turn. From there things were much simpler, The only other thing that might survive a Thunderbolt is a Tropius, but that Pokémon does not have enough damage to defeat me. After obtaining this gem, I went straight to the Pokémon graveyard to get the Magma emblem, but that might be a mistake since I have to walk down and get to the next town instead of straight up flying away. In Lily Cove, we have the quote-unquote pleasure to face off against May once again, and this time the story is pretty much the same as our previous encounter. Marshtomp deals a lot of damage to me with his ground attacks, but not enough to finish me, and from there I can defeat the rest of her team. Now that that is done too, I can fly away to the Team Magma's hideout, where once we reach the bottom, we see Maxie awaken the legendary Pokémon Groudon with the wrong orb. Since the legendary flees away, he attacks us, and of course this fight was quite painful too. His Camerupt upgraded from a magnitude to earthquake, so now I can't even hope for a weak roll. Instead, I have to pray that Swagger is good enough to make him hit himself at least a couple of times, but fortunately that did not need to happen, as I get a crit with the tri-attack to finish off the Groudon before he can do anything too bad to me. After defeating Maxie here, we have to infiltrate the Team Aqua hideout, but here we are only able to find one of their admirals. This guy does not have a Camerupt, so much like Shelly, his team is swept away by a few Thunderbolts. Then I had to do quite a bit of grinding, because in the next major fight against Tate and Liza there is another earthquake spammer. I attempted them a few times at level 63, but eventually gave up and used a bunch of rare candies. Getting up to level 69 was not really mandatory. I could have tried a few more attempts with the Swagger and hoped for good RNG, but this higher level allows me to two-shot the Claydol with Return, and without that Pokémon in the fight, I can switch back to Thunderbolt and one-shot every other Pokémon they have. For those curious, I did try Hidden Power, but unfortunately the typing was Poison, which is very much not useful against ground typings. Now that we have defeated the twins and got their badge, we have to go help Steven face off against the leadership of Team Magma. Once again, there are a few Camerupts in this fight, but unlike our previous encounters, this time around they are not very willing to use Earthquake. That may be to not damage their partner, but to be honest, I am very grateful about that. That is the only attack that really worries me in this fight, since I am able to resist anything else, and between Thunderbolts and Returns I was quickly able to finish off all the Pokémons on the right side, turning the fight into a 2v1 in our favor. From there, me and Steven landed attack after attack on the remaining Pokémons, and after a few more turns, I can finally finish off all of them. Now that Maxie and his goons are dealt with, Steven gives us the Dive HM, which we have to use to reach the seafloor cave. Here we arrive before Archie, but he quickly follows us and challenges us to a duel. Even though his levels are quite high, he does not have a ground type, and so this fight was decided even before starting. After demolishing his team, the red orb activates anyway and wakes up Kyogre. Now that both of the legendaries are awake, the weather in the region is a mess. Having both of the legendaries awake at the same time is quite the problem, because their abilities make the weather switch from sunny to rainy very often. To put an end to that climate disaster, we go ask Rayquaza for help, and the green snake makes the other two legendaries stop very easily. Once the world is rescued, we can finish off with the badge collection, and fortunately for us, Juan is nearby. His team is mostly made out of water types, but of course he has a Whiscash too. Since this one is not too high, I used 2 returns back to back, ready to tank a earthquake. That never came really. He tried to set up with amnesia for some reason, which was a very bad idea on his part. I followed up with a few thunderbolts for the rest of his team, and that's the last badge acquired too. Now that we have all of the badges, we can get into the Victory Road, where we are soon reached by Wally. The fight against him was not particularly difficult. His team is very heterogeneous, so there were quite a few of them who resisted electric, but none of them were immune, and so even though it took a few attacks for some of them, especially if Wally spammed full restores on his Pokémons, after quite a while I was still able to get through all of them with my attacks. After defeating him, I started to get prepared for the league, but honestly there was not much I could do. I just teached Substitute as usual, because that move will surely come in handy. And then I went in. The first fight was against Sidney, which is not too troublesome. His Pokémons are quite annoying, sure, but behind a Substitute things should be much simpler. The only other annoying thing is that some of them are grass types, and so they resist my electric attacks. At least they are a 2-shot, and unless I get super unlucky with evasion, this fight should not be too troublesome. It did last quite a few turns, because Sidney used a whole bunch of full restores on the Cacturn, but eventually he ran out of potions, and so I was able to finish off the last of his Pokémons. Phoebe is the second member of the Elite Four, and the fight against her should be a bit simpler. I started off by using Substitute just to protect myself against Curse in case Thunderbolt was not a one-shot. Turns out all that precaution was not really needed, as I am able to one-shot her first Dusclops, and the second one too, but that was a crit, so does not really matter. Anyway, once those two guys are defeated, the rest of the team quickly follows, as they are much less tanky. And so it's already time for the third member. I was not 100% sure whether to use Substitute or not against her, because if I do, that gives her enough time to set up the hail, which is very annoying as it deals chip damage even behind the Substitute. So instead I tried to go without it. This one is also a bit risky, because if some of her Pokémons survive an attack and land an Ice Beam, I could get frozen, but that's unlikely and it did not happen. Last but not least is Drake, and this one was the one that I am most worried about. Dragon resists electric, and so my damage is not very great. But the worst part is Flygon. That Pokémon is part ground and it knows Earthquake. And so once again I had to use Swagger and hope for the best. This time around things worked in my favor. Flygon lost a turn to Confusion, and even though it was able to snap through it in the next turn, he was only able to break my sub before I finished it off. Salamence survived a Thunderbolt, but he got fully paralyzed, so that was very lucky. Ultimately, I don't think that matters, since I think I would have been able to survive a Flamethrower. To make things full circle, he sends out Shelgon as his last Pokémon. After all of those major threats, Drake sort of ran out of gas, as his last few Pokémons are much less threatening. Even though they may have survived a few turns each, they were unable to deal all that much damage, and so I took home the victory. And finally we are face to face with the champion, who uses water types, so this will be easy, right? Yeah, no. Whiscash turned out to be a major problem. He is capable of one-shotting me with Earthquake even without the Swagger attack boost. After giving it a few attempts, I leveled up a little bit more with the last remaining candies, but honestly that was not really needed. That was mostly for a morale boost. I still lost one more time, but the one after that was the successful one. This one started well, as I was able to use a sub and keep it all the way to Whiscash. He was not very nice and broke my substitute in the first turn. At least he hit himself the next turn, and so I just had barely enough damage to finish it off. From there, things are much simpler. The only thing that may still be a problem is Ludicolo because of the double teams. In fact, I lost once to him in the previous attempt, and even though I miss a couple of times, I am finally able to land a crit to destroy that damned Pokémon. And with that, Wallace is defeated, and that's how Magneton became the champion of the Hoenn region. Yeah, as expected, Magneton was a pain. His 4 times weakness to ground and lack of any moves to deal with those Pokémons made it very hard to use. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe and all of that. If you have any comments with ideas or feedback, leave them down below, and I'll see you next week. Bye!